welcome to the Film for Fans podcast, the podcast from movie fans for movie fans. I am your host, Ryan Dunlevy, joined as always by my co-host, Rob Dunham.
And if you don't have a cat riding a popsicle t-shirt, then are you even living? Probably not.
Apparently not.
Yeah.
No, definitely not. Well, we could go endlessly about great t-shirt designs. However, this is not a t-shirt podcast. It is a movie podcast. So we will, of course, update you on the box office. We will discuss further a story of the movie industry continually trying to drive itself out of business.
Although we do have apparently we have an argument for the defense.
Yes.
We'll see how strong that argument is.
Yes, I'm not sure it's going to work, but we're going to give it a go.
Is this like the debate class in high school where they made you argue for the thing that you knew was incorrect?
Yes, and we are, of course, talking about AMC theaters and their seating pricing. We will continue our discussion of Oscar winners, this time Oscar winners of the 1990s, and, of course, our watch list. You ready to get started, Rob?
Let's do it.
Awesome. I love it. Okay, so first up, let's give you a box office update. And first off at the box office, we have, for the first time in 2 months, a new winner at the box office.
No Avatar, huh?
No Avatar. Number one at the box office in its first week in the debut, Knock at the Cabin. 14.1 million for Knock at the Cabin. Ranks it first this week. Number two coming in, another new entrant, 80 for Brady, 12.7 million. Avatar finishes third in its 8th week in the box office, a position it has not now known, $11.3 million. BTS yet to come in cinemas, 8 million. And our top five is rounded out with Puss in Boots at 7.9 million. All right, Rob, we got a couple of new entrants into the top five. What do you make of it?
I think any credit James Cameron got for Avatar breaking the $2 billion mark should be immediately rescinded due to the fact that 80 for Brady. That should not have happened in any week ever, not even the first week for that movie.
Yeah.
I'm surprised by that, I gotta say. I really did not think there was a double-digit million audience around for this movie, but apparently senior citizens must really love Tom Brady.
They must, and I'm guessing there was a lot of older ladies lunch and movie sessions over the last week. I saw as part of an article we'll discuss later that there was a discount offered at certain theater chains for matinee showings of 80 for Brady. So that may have played a role.
It's like the early bird special at the diner.
Yeah. But I think the only thing one can say is the NFL is this good that it managed to do something to appeal to like older women. Like the NFL is that big of a king that it somehow managed to draw in a bunch of older women. Like I'm assuming that's the audience for this movie, but 12.7 million.
I don't see any world in which another sport would have generated a movie like this that many people would have gone to see.
Yeah, no, I guarantee you not.
Yeah.
No way. Yeah, what do you make of Knock at the Cabin? 14.1. Is that on the low side for you, or is that about average?
I think it's decent, but I do think it is. We've seen some other ones do a little bit better than that. So I do think there's a lot of doubt around M. Night's qualifications at this point. And I think really what will be interesting is to see what it does next week.
Yeah.
To see if it stays in the double-digit millions, if there's enough word of mouth spreading around for people to want to go see it, or if it drops significantly, then it could be like just another step down for him, unfortunately. So I'm really interested in seeing what happens there.
Yeah, I'm guessing next week will determine whether or not this is a successful movie. I would have guessed around 20 million for this one. So I do think for me it came in a little under projections. I didn't see what the industry's actual projections were for it. So I don't know if it met industry expectations. But it did come in number one, and it does have the option. I mean, it's always kind of interesting when a film comes out, second week marketing, number one in the box office. And like, there's a massive difference between like $150 million movie number one at the box office and a $14 million movie number one at the box office. But it does get that claim. And so maybe that will help it, along with seeing what people thought about it and word of mouth. And yeah, we'll see going forward. All right. There's a killer coming out this week, Rob. It's going to dominate the box office, man.
What we got?
Magic Mike's Last Dance. Yes. There are technically four movies coming out this weekend. Maybe led by Magic Mike's Last Dance.
Unironically.
And of course, this is, I think, the third Magic Mike movie. I don't really... I
think there was Magic Mike and then Magic Mike XXL or something. Yeah,
something like that. Maybe just XL. Maybe not. Maybe he's not super gigantic.
I mean, it depends on if you.
It depends on what we're talking about.
Sass Channing Tatum.
Yeah. All right, this is going to a weird place. Let's get back on the rails here. But Magic Mike, of course, stars Channing Tatum, but his main co-star in this one is going to be Salma Hayek, and Mike takes the stage again following a business deal that went bust, leaving him broke and taking bartender gigs in Florida. Mike heads to London with a wealthy socialite who lures him into an offer he can't refuse. Magic Mike, Last Dance. Hopefully that Last Dance means this is the last one of these that the box office gets subjected to. But we'll see. Next up on the list, Consecration. So this is another horror film. And this is after the alleged suicide of her priest brother, Grace travels to a remote Scottish convent where he fell to his death. Distrusting the church's account, she uncovers the murder, sacrilege, and disturbing truth for herself. And this stars Jenna Malone and Danny Houston. All right, so that's Consecration. And third, we have Seriously Red, which is just now kind of coming out in theaters. I don't know if it plays somewhere else. It's technically got a 2022 one, but I saw it in some local theaters. So, and it's a realtor pursues a new career as a Dolly Parton impersonator.
Okay.
Life choices, man.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some life choices going on in that department. And this stars Crew Bolin, Daniel Weber, and Rose Byrne. And we have the official re-release of Titanic. Yes, Titanic is back in theaters for a 25th anniversary re-release, because that's what he does to continue making more money off of his very.
I heard that this Titanic re-release, if you're interested in going to see it, it's going to be near or far, wherever you are, you'll have an opportunity to go check out Titanic.
No, just no. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Newsflash, the boat still sinks.
I think they would have fixed that in the
She still kicks DiCaprio off of the door for reasons.
Yeah, she loves him so much that she just wants to watch him drown. It's great.
And the gemstone still gets thrown into the ocean for some reason. Because why not?
I mean, shout out to my friends Keith and Jen, because this was their very first date going to see this movie, and they've been married now for over 20 years. So that tells you, well, it's been a while.
Apparently, close to 25 years. It probably wasn't, not exactly, but that gives you some kind of time scale. Apparently, they need to go see this movie again. Then
I don't think they want to.
I don't blame you. But apparently,
although the craziest, I think when I look back at my life when it comes to movie phenomena, the craziest movie phenomenon I can remember is people going to see Titanic like 5-6 times, because I knew many people did that, and it made no sense to me whatsoever.
It made no sense to me.
Why would you want to spend over 3 hours in the theater that many times?
I don't know.
Yeah,
we're going to get to that in a moment, because this film's going to come back up in a later segment here. But that's your box office coming up. All right, Rob. Interesting entrance this week. Are you going to see any of them?
Probably not.
I mean,
I'm going to the movie theater tomorrow, but I'm going to see Knock at the Cabin.
Yeah.
Which came out last week, technically. So I can't say I'm particularly interested in any of these movies coming out.
No, it's a little bit rough. Now,
I think I might be actively disinterested in Magic Mike and Titanic. And I think that the Red movie is a very strange sequel to Turning Red.
Probably.
And I'm not really following the storyline here.
Yeah, no. Yeah, this is for me, it's a rough week in the box office. There's really not a whole lot I want to see. Now, next week, that's going to change. We got a pretty big movie coming out next week, which hopefully we'll get a chance to get to here. Not this week, but we're going to preview that. And that's, of course, Ant-Man and the Wasp,
yes.
Quantumania. So that's coming out in the following week. Yeah, so not a lot in the box office this week. If you're a diehard Titanic fan, have at it. If for some reason you're a Magic Mike fan, then
seek professional help.
Indeed, question your life choices, and let's move forward. All right, so now we got to get to this other story, and this story is, it's a story. That's one thing we can say about it. It is absolutely a story, and this is AMC Theaters is moving towards a pricing model based on where you sit in the theater. Yes, that's right. You were going to have to pay for your movie ticket based on where you sit in the theater. They're rolling this change out in a couple of major cities right now. The plan is that it will roll out to all theaters later in the year. And basically what it looks like is if you sit in the front rows, you will get a slight discount. Your normal ticket pricing will happen for most of the other rows, and the ones that they deem as prime seating will charge you $1 or $2 more per seat. There are some caveats around this. If you have like the AMC like high member program or whatever, I forget what it's called, then you aren't charged the premium seating. This only applies on shows after 4 p.m. And of course, they have a discount Tuesday, like a lot of theaters have. It doesn't apply there. But this is drawing a pretty stark reaction. And this is kind of what they have to say about it. Let me find the correct quotes here. Sightline at AMC, that's what their program is. Their seating program is called Sightline. At AMC, more closely aligns AMC's. There we go. More closely aligns AMC's seating pricing approach to that of many other entertainment venues, offering experience-based pricing and another way for moviegoers to find value at the movies. Now, there's a lot that we want to say about this and will say about this. However, I thought it would be fun to potentially play devil's advocate on this one and to have each of us try to sell this idea. Let's say you are an AMC executive. You are pitching this idea to the board. You think this is a great idea. How are you selling it?
We live in a world of the VIP, right? And so you want the customer to feel valued. You want them to feel like they are very important, a very important person.
Indeed.
If you would, right?
Yes.
And you want them to be able to encourage their friends to come out to AMC. You want them to maybe, have a little swagger when it comes to the theater going experience. So, if you charge people a little extra to sit in the best seats for viewing the movie, then they're going to feel added, and that's going to be a value add to your entire theater experience because people will talk about it on social media. They'll talk about it to their friends. It'll become a huge deal that, they sat in the best sight line, and it's going to become a huge international trend. And everyone's going to love us because of this.
I see you're having a hard time ever overcoming the undertone of sarcasm as you're trying to sell this.
I have no idea what you mean.
I, all right, as I'm thinking about this, if I'm trying to sell this, I think I have to say, look, we're hemorrhaging money. We need to figure out a way to get more money in. So what do we have that's a commodity that we can sell? What is some additional commodity that we have? And when we look around and we see other venues, we see concerts, we see sporting events, your ticket pricing is based on where you sit. You know, further up you sit, the worse your seats are, the cheaper you pay for them. We are missing out on the opportunity to have a similar pricing structure, which could potentially get us some more revenue as we are continually hemorrhaging money. So that's the biggest thing. And it shouldn't be that big of a deal because people are used to this experience in other venues.
I think you might also argue that no one sits in the front 2 rows anyway.
Yes.
So by charging a little extra for the other rows, you're going to gain money from those rows. And you also might push some additional people into those front rows that aren't being used anyway, thereby gaining some money. Mm-hmm. I could see that being an actual argument.
Yeah, if somebody wants to, that they can sit in those for a discounted rate, if that doesn't bother you. If, you know, trying to lie on your back and crane your neck at a 45-degree angle doesn't bother you, hey, you get to go at a cheaper rate. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think that's about the only arguments I've got on this one. Now let's get to the thoughts. Rob, this sounds like a horrendous idea. What is your initial take on this?
Out of all the movie theater ideas I've heard in my life, this is one of them, and it is really not good.
Yeah.
I can't recall anyone ever talking to me about where they sat in the movie theater when they watched a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not a thing.
Yeah.
So when you say it's maybe one of the selling points is it's a commodity that we can monetize, like, it's not, because no one cares. I mean, other than maybe sitting in those front 2 rows.
Yeah. There's not, where they're making the comparison to like concerts and sporting events, but there is a major qualitative difference in where you sit, like say at an NFL football game or at a hockey game or something like that. There's a qualitative difference in the experience based on where you sit. Now, some of the pricing is wonky, as it always is when you have seat-based pricing. We have something that seems like a good seat, but it's actually low, or vice versa. Mm-hmm. But there really is. Or if you go to a concert, the closer you sit, the more you get to see facial expressions of the band, the inner workings of the musicians when they're playing their instruments. Depending on the place you're at, the acoustic position. Like if you don't want to sit super close to the front when you're going to see like a symphony or something, mm-hmm. because of the way the sound coalesces. There's a qualitative difference. Aside from the front rows, I don't know that there's a qualitative difference whatsoever in going to the movie theater.
There's really no difference to me between sitting at the end of a row or in the middle of a row.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes sound
mm-hmm.
can be different depending on if you're sitting in the back, middle, or towards the front.
Yeah.
Maybe particularly in like a large format theater, mm-hmm. like an IMAX theater. Yeah. So this raises another question. Sidebar: what are your favorite seats in the movie theater?
If we're talking about IMAX, I do like to sit much further back than I do at, say, a normal theater. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I like to basically be middle. Mm-hmm. Not too far to the back, like somewhere, like if it's multi-tiered, somewhere in the middle, towards mm-hmm. the back of the middle. Mm-hmm. That's usually like to be middle of the row too.
And this is why I bring this up, because for me, I have 2 favorite places I like to sit. Yeah. Either like a free seat on the handicap row.
Yeah. Those are nice.
Or I sit in the very back row in the middle.
Yeah.
And so just between you and me, we are only two people.
Yes.
We have two very different determinations on what the best seat is.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why I think this is a terrible idea, because I don't think there's no such thing as a universally recognized best seat.
Yeah.
And like you said, because it's in a small enclosed space, it's not like a sporting event or a concert. Yeah. There's no premium seat.
Plus, you have very different size of theaters. You can be in a very small theater where all the seats are virtually identical. Or you can get one of the big giant theaters that they usually put the main big releases in, where there is a qualitative difference a little bit. Like when you start actually getting to some differences.
See, what I want to see AMC do is like, I want them to go into every theater. I want them to rip up all their seats. I want the first two rows to be actual like wooden slat seats. You have to pull down and have all your weight on, or they snap back on you. The next row up can be plastic seats. The next row up can be ones that recline by pulling a lever and are like vinyl seating thing. And the next one can be recliners that are powered. And then the very middle, I guess, like those 3 seats, we can have the recliners that have heating on them, and you can like order food from them, and like they can give you a massage while you're watching the movie. Like this is how absurd this idea is, that like that's the only way I could actually see this making any sense.
Well, what you're bringing up is the fact that basically what happens is people need to see where is the added value. If I'm paying more, where's the added value? And basically what they're doing with this program rollout is saying, no, where you normally sit, a lot of you where you normally sit, you're just going to pay more. You're not actually getting anything for that. You're just paying more. And so it's basically going to look like what it is, and that's a straight money grab.
Yeah.
And so it's not going to engender a better experience. Like there's nothing that comes with it that says you paying more, but you're getting more.
And what's interesting to me is, and I think I'll say interesting, but also the word arrogant, is that they're trying this in some major cities, but they're saying it will be in all the theaters by the end of the year, because I think this could like flame out miserably in the big cities.
Yeah.
And they might have to like roll it all back. But they've already said we're going to do it no matter what in every theater.
And I can see 2 things along these lines. One is, instead of getting more people to pay more for those tickets, then basically what you have is you have a theater where everyone is sitting everywhere except the prime seats. Like, because how many of your average showings are selling out? Not that many. So basically everyone who goes to the movies is just not going to pay the extra and is just going to sit elsewhere. So instead of gaining more money, they're may even be losing money, because someone's just going to be like, I'm not going to go sit there.
I think in this era of streaming, one thing that theater executives have proven they don't understand is how much money people have invested in their own home theaters.
Yeah.
Where they can sit at home, eat whatever food they want in the comfort of their own home, on their own couch, have surround sound, have a huge screen in front of them, and not have to worry about any of this nonsense.
Yeah. And I think it's going the wrong direction too, because it's creating a much more complicated system. And one of the things that what you should be doing at a theater is making it as easy to get into the theater as possible. And this experience needs to be as easy, as comfortable, as friendly, as user experience friendly as humanly possible. And creating this extra layer, especially because most of the theaters have scaled back and are not doing ticket counters. You're just getting it. You're getting your tickets when you're getting your food. Those lines get really backed up. And now you're adding another level of complexity. And inevitably for a long time, someone's going to show up late. It's going to have to sit in one of those middle seats and pay extra. And there's going to be a long conversation about, why am I having to pay extra? What is this? What is happening? What's going on? And
the other thing is, once the movie starts and those seats aren't taken, somebody's going to move into those seats.
Yeah.
Because they're there, just like a sporting event.
Yeah.
And I can guarantee you that the 14, 15, and 16-year-olds working at the movie theater are not going to care.
Especially
even 1%.
Because there's even fewer ushers now than there used to be.
Like how many, I can't remember the last time I went to a movie and somebody actually came into the theater as the movie was going on.
Yeah.
Like
it's been a long time since I've seen that. Yeah. So similarly to the Netflix story about password sharing cracking down we talked about last week, it seems like there's an organization going out of their way to anger their customer base, and you're not really getting anything for it. So I don't understand what they're doing. I don't think it's going to help in any way. I think it's just going to hurt. So we'll see, though. We'll see. I'm betting money they're backtracking on this in a few months, but I don't know.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, let's move on to our discussion item for this week. And if you joined us last week, we ranked the best picture winners from 2000 to 2009. So this week, we're taking a further step back. We are going to the best picture winners from 1990 through 1999. And this is an interesting group. What I'm finding, just kind of a header for this, what I'm finding as I go through these lists, not only the movies that won, but also the movies that were nominated, is that one thing I'm finding is what it's saying about the movie industry during that era. And there are some very clear trends that you can see developing as you look at the best picture winners and the nominations from 1990 up to where we are now. And we can get to this more because it's a much bigger discussion item once we go next week into the 2010s and when we arrive to where we're at now. But there's a stark contrast, and you can see the trend lines as you go through this. And now I know we did them out of order. I wanted to do the 2000s first because I thought that was a good starting point. And then we're going back to the 90s. We'll go to the 2010s next week. But there's a real trend line here. And this is going to become apparent when we're looking at the Best Picture nominations here. So just go through the list. 1990 winner was Driving Miss Daisy. 1991, Dances with Wolves. 1992, Silence of the Lambs. 1993, Unforgiven. 1994, Schindler's List. 1995, Forrest Gump. 1996, Braveheart. 1997, The English Patient. 1998, Titanic. And 1999, Shakespeare in Love. Okay. All right, Rob. So what we're going to do here is, of course, we are going to put them in rank order. So each of us ranked them based on which ones we thought were best and which ones we thought were worst. And then after we do our rankings, I'm going to go through a couple of ones that had different year and go through the nominations that were nominated that year. And we'll kind of discuss, now that we have like 25, 35 years worth of distance from these movies, were they ultimately the best picture that came out that year?
There's one movie that came out in the 90s that's not on this list, and that's The Shawshank Redemption. It
was in a nomination.
Yes.
So that you're jumping the gun, man. We're getting there. We're going to get there.
Yep.
We're going to get there. So let's go with number 10. What did you have down at the bottom? What was number 10?
Okay, so there are two that I have not seen.
Let's go over that first. Okay. Which ones have you not seen from this list?
I have not seen The English Patient or Unforgiven, so I can't rank those. So my lowest one on the list remaining would be Driving Miss Daisy.
Okay.
Number 8.
So that's number 8 for you. So I have seen all the ones on this list, with the caveat that it has been forever since I've seen Unforgiven and since I've seen Dances with Wolves. I've seen them each once, and it's been a very long time. So my memory could be a little faulty on these, but I have seen all the ones on the list. Number 10 for me was Titanic. Big, huge, giant release movie. It's more a meme now almost than it is like an actually well-respected film. We were even joking around about it when we were talking about the re-release. It almost has a joke-like quality to it. It's very 90s. It was very 90s. It was very emblematic of that particular era of the late 90s. particular the Celine Dion song that was just incessant everywhere. So it brings back memories, but in terms of where it ranks on the list, like it's almost a cartoonish the way we view this movie now. So that's why it's number 10 on my list. Number 9, Driving Miss Daisy. It's number 9 on my list. It's a good movie. It actually is. It's a good character development movie. So I don't have an issue with it from a movie perspective. I just don't find it particularly interesting. It's not super interesting a movie for me. Mm-hmm. But it's a good movie, and Morgan Freeman is excellent as always in Driving Miss Daisy. So that's why I have a 10 and 9. So go ahead. Your number 8 was?
So I gave 8, Driving Miss Daisy.
Driving Miss Daisy. Okay, so what was your rationale for that being in number 8?
Basically exactly what you said. That's a good movie for what it is, but I don't have it higher than any of the other ones on this list.
Yep. Okay. For me, number 8 was Shakespeare in Love. This was kind of a little bit of a surprise winner in that year. It's an okay movie. I mean, Ralph Fiennes is always good. Or Joseph Fiennes. That was Joseph Fiennes. Gwyneth Paltrow. I like Shakespeare. So from that aspect, but it's like a romantic comedy drama. It's fine, but that's it. It's fine.
It is a lot different than most of the other movies on this list.
It is the one of the most out there ones, and it's one of the few kind of like romantic type movies on the list. I mean, some people might say Titanic, but look, really. But yeah, it is a little bit of an outlier. There is another one that's kind of considered a romance movie, but there's a lot of historical drama on there too. But that's so I have Shakespeare in Love at number 8. What do you have for number 7?
So number 7, I have Titanic.
Okay.
I think it's a little bit. I think it's hard to argue that it's not a good movie. I mean, it made a ridiculous, absurd amount, especially for what it was.
Yeah,
like a period historical drama. Like it had no right to make the amount of money.
I think there's a fascination with the Titanic. It's something that has captured eras. Like there's just an international fascination with the Titanic. Yeah. So I think there's a lot in there for that.
And I will say that regardless of what you think about it, this movie, it's very clear that James Cameron has a deep respect and love for the story of the Titanic.
Yes.
Whether or not you agree with some of the choices he made stylistically or artistically with how he told the story, he is very passionate about the story. There's no denying that.
Yeah.
Because it's very much a love letter to that whole situation. So that was my number 7, Titanic.
Okay. So that leaves me at number 6. Oh, wait, no, I'm at number 7.
Yeah, you're at number 7.
I'm at number 7. Forrest Gump for me. This is going to be a lot higher on a lot of people's lists. I just don't like it. I'll be honest. I know I'm in the minority on this. And this is a personal preference selection versus my ranking of the actual film. I just can't put it higher because I don't particularly like it. What it accomplished is amazing. Like it encompasses an entire era of history in a way that very few other films have. I just don't love the character of Forrest. I don't love the character of Jenny. She drives me nuts. I've just never enjoyed this movie. I mean, I can totally see why people like it, and I can totally see what it did from a cinematic standpoint, and I don't have a problem with the fact that people like it or that it won Best Picture. It certainly could fit in that classification. This is a personal bias, again, Forrest Gump, that has it at number 7 for me.
So number 6 for me is Shakespeare in Love. Just because I don't think it's not in the top 5 of what I have remaining. I think it's a really good movie. Like we've talked about, there's a pretty broad distinction between this movie and the other movies in this list. One thing a lot of these movies have in common is they're long dramas. And I will say that with this one and Forrest Gump, you got a little bit more. those are the two that have like the most humor in them. Driving Miss Daisy has a little humor in it, too. But these are Shakespeare in Love is more like in your face, ribald kind of humor than anything else on this list. Forrest Gump is more like quirky, kind of silly humor, I would say, when you're comparing the two.
Yeah.
But I wonder in some ways if they wanted this to be the best picture just because of how different it was, in a way that it was breathing a different kind of life into the movie scene. And that's why I got recognized. Like you said, it was kind of a little bit of an unknown like surprise that came like towards the end of the award season, picked up steam and ended up winning the award.
Yeah, for sure. So the next one on my list at number 6 is Unforgiven. Unforgiven is number 6. There's a little personal animus here, not animus, bias, because I'm not a big fan of Westerns. But Clint Eastwood directs. Clint Eastwood has been a great director for decades now. And it's a very well done Western. It's got all the classic Western tropes to it. It's got everything you want in it. I'm just like, it's just as a genre, there are not a ton of Westerns that I love. It's just not my favorite genre. So that, again, not a reflection on the quality of the movie. Just it's not going to be higher on my personal list because I'm not a huge fan of Westerns.
So I think when you look at top 5, I think any of these top 5 that are remaining on my list are, I wouldn't necessarily say.
Okay, I missed one. I skipped an order. I missed the English Patient on my list.
Okay.
Sorry, I have to go back.
Where do you have the English Patient?
I had Unforgiven at number 5. Or 1, 2. At 5. I missed the English Patient. Is I had English Patient at number 7.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you skipped over that
so
one.
I missed that one. So now I've completely ruined the entire order.
That's all right. So English Patient number 7.
English Patient number 7. The big knock on this movie is it's long. It's really long. The juxtaposition of the kind of romance caretaking story with the actual historical events. It is an interesting story. It's captivating. It's interesting. It gives you some historical and geographical perspective. It's well edited. Whenever you have storylines that are crossing timelines, the editing becomes very important as to how you tell the story and when you reveal what you reveal. So from that standpoint, it is an interesting movie, but it is very long. So that's why I have it lower on the list.
And then, so just to recap, you had Unforgiven number 6.
I had Unforgiven number 6.
Okay.
Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4. I had Forrest Gump at 6. I had Unforgiven at number 5.
Okay. All right. So my number 5 then was Schindler's List.
Okay.
This movie is phenomenal, but like we've talked about, some movies being long. And I think one thing that detracts on this one for me is we've talked about this recently quite a bit is watchability.
Yeah.
Because this movie is so heavy that it is not one you want to watch again for quite a while, if ever, after you see it the first time.
Yeah.
Now, does that make so I guess the question, the overarching question there, philosophically, is does that make it not a great movie, or does that make it a superb movie if it impacts you that much?
Yeah, I think you have to put it in context. There is no way to do this movie justice without it being very difficult to watch. And by nature, it's going to be that way. And the impact it had to the point where schools were showing this. Like, I first watched this in high school. Like, high schools made special exemptions to see this. You would never normally see a movie that has what this movie has in it in a high school, or at least you wouldn't. I have no idea what they're doing in high schools now. Who knows? But they showed this in high school. Like, it's impossible to do this movie in such a way where it was like, oh, let's pop in Schindler's List movie night.
Yeah.
You're not doing that. You're not doing that. So that's different than, like, I talked about this a couple of weeks ago. A Man Called Ova was very, very heavy. and felt very, very heavy. But I ding it for that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't ding Schindler's List for that. It had a very immediate impact, but it depends on how you want to judge it. It does affect I think it does affect the lack of watchability, does affect the impact the movie has over a broad range of history.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is a movie you're going to watch once and not come back to it for a very long time.
Mm-hmm. All right. So what do you have? You would do number 4 next?
Yeah, number 4 for me was Schindler's List.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for all of those same reasons. Brilliant film, perfectly illustrated. It was a story that was deeply necessary and needed to be told, and needed to be told in a way that garnered a broad audience. Mm-hmm. And so, from a historical perspective, this represents one of the things that movies can do well is put you in that place and let you see things for what they are, put you in those worlds. And so from that is a perfect illustration of very well done cinema. But it's very low on the watchability score. And so that's why it's lower on this list for me.
Number 4 for me, I have Avatar in the Wild West, otherwise known as Dances with Wolves. Because we talked about how Avatar is really Dances with Wolves in space.
Yeah.
One of the primary knocks on it. And I think when you look at the concept of fish out of water stories, which is a major movie hallmark, I think this is one of the best. I think it does an adequate job of being respectful of the culture that it's talking about, that Kevin Costner's character is integrating into. And I think that there's a believable story there about the progression of that character. I think some people maybe knock on this would be, and it's like a lot of these movies, how long it is. It's definitely a movie you have to invest in. But I would say that it's eminently more watchable than Schindler's List or Titanic or some other longer movies. There are things in it that are worth watching. The main thing being Tatanka.
Oh man! So that was number 4 on your list.
Yes.
All right. So it's number 3 on mine. So I'll continue the discussion about it. Again, this is probably the movie I've seen the longest ago. And so my memories of it are a little bit fuzzy. What I remember, it's a great illustration of excellent movie making for the era. It really defined how they did like historic period pieces in the 90s. Another great example is Gettysburg. It came out a couple years later. Gettysburg is another great example. There's a lot of crossover in cinematography on those films. And so it perfectly encapsulates a specific era's and a genre of films in that specific era. Kevin Costner, of course, this was the height of Kevin Costner. Early 90s Kevin Costner was like the gold standard of acting at that moment. And so it's a film that I don't have a ton to say about it, but it's just really, really well done. That's my main thing on this. It's just really, really well done.
All right, so we're on to my number 3.
Yeah.
And at number 3 for me, and these top 3 I think are very close for me, but I have to say Forrest Gump is my number 3. As you said, I have it higher on my list than you.
Most people
because it lands with me. I think it does a fantastic job of presenting some very serious, deep cultural pain in a way that is relevant and still is able to bring some humor out of it. And I think that one of the ways you move forward from painful experiences in the culture is to bring light to it and sometimes make light of it. The Vietnam War in particular is the part of this movie that sticks out to me the most, because there was so much animosity and hatred for people involved in that conflict, both going overseas and people in the establishment hating people who were anti-establishment in our own country. And the terror and pain from those situations still reverberates through this day. And I think it did. I think that, like Good Morning Vietnam, and and some other movies did an interesting job of, providing some levity to that situation and reminding people that, these are all human beings. And I think that was lost a lot in that scenario. And I think this movie did a really good job on that particular issue of bringing some insight. So it's always resonated with me. I find it funny. I really like Tom Hanks. And I think Tom Hanks is, no matter what you feel about this movie, I think Tom Hanks is phenomenal.
Oh yeah.
In this movie.
Always.
Like just,
yeah.
There are very few people I think who could have played the character he did without it becoming a complete caricature.
Yeah.
Now, people obviously, life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get, et cetera, et cetera. But he plays that with an earnestness that very few actors, I think, would have been able to pull off.
The quote from Tropic Thunder just came to mind, but I'm not going to. I'm not going there. I'm not going there. Yeah. No, I can't disagree with anything that you're saying. It's just the difference in preferences, So
all right, so we're on to your number 2.
This was tough. Number 1 and number 2. I went back and forth.
And we have the same number 1 and number 2, which is very interesting.
Back and forth and back and forth. Number 2 is Braveheart. Yeah, number 2 for me is Braveheart. Either one of these two could have been number 1. Of course, at this point, we know that the other one's going to be Silence of the Lambs. So between Silence of the Lambs and Braveheart, I have Braveheart at number 2. In fact, I'll just talk about that when I get to number 1, but I'll just talk about Braveheart for now. An unbelievably exceptional war film. It creates one of the most iconic hero stories. It is really something that stuck out, especially with men. Women loved it too, because there are some genuine love stories and interest and some heroic narratives in this. But the figure of Mel Gibson's character in this film and the way Mel Gibson portrayed it really spoke to a generation of men in a way that a lot of other films don't, about the character of a man, the traits of a man, what we want to see, what we want to be as men. And to do it in such a way where the cinematography was excellent, the battle scenes were engaging, the fighting, the heroic nature of it, the gruesome nature of it, the betrayal, like it had all the meat to it. And to be able to get that much play out of a character that almost nobody had heard of prior to this film. And now it is, the William Wallace character is a cultural icon. Like, I mean, it has waned a little bit because the film is, almost 30 years old at this point, but people know who William Wallace is now. And that is a result of this movie and this film.
Braveheart is also my number 2.
Okay.
No doubt unsurprised by. Was not as hard of a decision for me.
Okay.
I think Silence of the Lambs is far and away the best movie of this decade. That's on this list.
Yeah. That's on this list, yes.
But Braveheart just had, like you said, tremendous cultural impact. I think you could make the argument that before Gladiator came out, it was the definitive movie centered around commander rallying people to fight for a cause. I do think Gladiator took that mantle when it came out. I just think it's a better movie.
Yeah.
But it speaks to how good this movie is. That I think it belongs in the same breath as Gladiator, because that is a very high standard.
Yeah.
To have. So I don't have a whole lot of other things to say about it because I agree with most of you. If I could talk about Silence of the Lambs, if I could lead that off.
Have at it. Number 1, Silence of the Lambs for both of us.
So Silence of the Lambs, the fact it's number 1 on your list, I think speaks probably higher to the quality of this movie than any other thing, because one thing that Ryan does not like, if you do not know, is horror movies. Silence of the Lambs found a way to be a horror movie, but also be so relatable to people that they were able to see themselves in it without becoming so afraid that they were too scared to watch it. And I think that is a phenomenal achievement.
Yeah.
The character that Thomas Harris created, Hannibal Lecter, I would argue is the best bad guy in the history of cinema. I think, you know, there are some others that could be up for that consideration.
Yeah.
But I can't think of many that were acted with such sincerity in such an unnerving way as Anthony Hopkins portrays this character.
Yeah.
It is chilling listening to him talk. And one thing that I've been starting to read a book, Mindhunters.
Oh, yeah.
Which is about the serial crime unit in the FBI. And one thing that he has said early in this book is that one thing they found with serial killers that you might not expect is that they are usually very affable, relatable, humorous, and easy to get along with. And that is the genius of this character, because he is just friendly enough to draw you in to his world, but he is mischievous and he is dangerous. And I really don't think there have been many better written characters in the history of cinema than Hannibal Lecter. That speaks to Thomas Harris's book, but it also speaks to the direction of this movie. And I think it's phenomenal. There are so many scenes that stick out in your mind when you think about this movie. And there's so much in it that's disturbing, but there is something about the movie, like I said, that although it's essentially a horror movie, it's still close enough to grasp for people.
Yeah.
Maybe because it's not incredibly gory, but there's still some stuff in there that's like, you sit and think about it and you're like, that is disturbing.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, because like I said, I know it's not a subgenre you're typically into.
I would push it more towards thriller than into the horror category. You can go either way. It's on that borderline. Places, movies like A Quiet Place, things along those lines, they push the border on thriller versus horror. I really like thrillers. I just don't like the horror. And so there are some that kind of teeter on the borderline of those. I'm usually okay with the ones that kind of teeter on the borderline. For me, what makes this movie so great is the psychological drama of it. It is an incredibly intelligent psychological movie. It is a mental game. It is a mental game back and forth. What game is he playing? And to watch Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal control everything from inside his cage, from inside his cell. Like you get this moment, like the juxtaposition of how the character seems when he talks versus the environment he's in, this glassed fish tank like cage, versus how he articulates himself and the high class in which he talks and the way in which he interacts with people. Like that juxtaposition, like you want to trust this guy, but you can't. And so that constantly playing around with that theme the entire movie is incredible. I love the scene where he gets moved into like the courthouse and he's in that cage in the courthouse and how cordial he's being with his detectives and all of that. And then he just goes out and just obliterates them the moment he gets the chance to. Like that character is incredible. I don't know if I would say he's the best, but I haven't really contemplated enough. He's in the conversation. That's absolutely for sure. But that balance between this unbelievably manipulative, psychological character versus the green, naive character played by Jodie Foster, that interplay is gold. It's so gold. And those scenes where the back and forth between them are incredible. I love this character so much. I absolutely love the TV show Hannibal, where Mads Mikkelsen, played Hannibal, and he was incredible in that too. There's so much meat to work with that character. Yeah. All right. So before we close this out, I just did a couple years that I want us to focus on and talk about, some of the other movies that were up for Best Picture. during that same year. The first one is 1990 for the 1990 Best Oscar, which went to Driving Miss Daisy. Here's the other nominations: Born on the 4th of July, Dead Poets Society, Field of Dreams, and then My Left Foot, which no one's ever heard. But Field of Dreams, Dead Poets Society, Driving Miss Daisy. I don't know how you feel about this. Those other two movies, Dead Poets Society and Field of Dreams, are all-timers. They're all-timers for me. They're on my all-time list. But I would argue Field of Dreams has had the biggest impact to the point where 2 years ago, MLB built the Field of Dreams field and had actual MLB teams playing on it. And then they did again last year too. This movie is still having ripple effects 30 years, almost 35 years down the pike. So I think when we look at this, for me, Field of Dreams has had the biggest impact of any of the movies in that year.
Yeah, I have to agree with you completely on that. And I think there is undoubtedly some personal bias about both of these other movies because Dead Poet Society, also with Robin Williams, just he is so good he was so good at investing himself in a character emotionally.
Yeah.
And there were not a whole lot of movies where he was the straight man or more serious. You think of this, think of Good Will Hunting.
Yeah.
There are a couple of other examples. But when he had to take that kind of role and he committed to it, there were very few actors who were better than him, and probably no comedian ever who was better at that kind of role.
No, he was such a good actor. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Real quickly, I'll do another one. 1992, A Few Good Men was in that one. I would argue that's still a movie that's on regularly and that people watch much more so than Unforgiven. So I would say, looking back on that, A Few Good Men. Crying Game was in that year. Howard's End and Scent of a Woman.
Can't handle the truth.
Yeah. Like one of the most iconic lines in movie history. You can't handle the truth. So I would argue A Few Good Men is better than that year. But we got to go to 1994. We have to go to 1994. Here's your Best Picture nominees. Actually, we'll go 94 to 95 because 94 was Schindler's List, but also The Fugitive and The Piano were in there. And The Fugitive. Oh, that's such a good movie. That's a tough one.
I don't care.
Like, that is another one of those iconic characters, iconic movies. While I don't know that I would necessarily say it deserves it, this is that watchability thing. Fugitive is one of the most eminently watchable movies that you'll ever find versus Schindler's List, which is not. But I would say on reflection, I think The Fugitive is the better. But 1995, the 1994 movies. Forrest Gump was the winner. We had Four Weddings for a Funeral, Pulp Fiction, Quiz Show, and The Shawshank Redemption. Wow. That was a loaded lineup for Best Picture.
So Pulp Fiction and The Shawshank Redemption, I still haven't made my list. So they are I can tell you before I even make my list, they are both in the top 10 of my movies of all time.
Yeah.
I can't be objective about this because The Shawshank Redemption is my favorite movie of all time.
Yeah.
And I think it's about as close to a perfect movie as you can have. So I understand why, because of the deep cultural impact at the time that Schindler's List had, that it won.
Yeah.
But I really do think The Shawshank Redemption is the better movie.
Oh yeah. I think what is IMDb, or not IMDb, one of the film lists has it as the number one movie of all time, Shawshank Redemption. I think this is the difference between like reacting to a movie in its immediacy, and Forrest Gump had that immediacy impact to it. Like, it was a cultural moment. It was a cultural hot start. Shawshank Redemption is by far the better movie. And that's not disparaging Forrest Gump, but it's by far the better movie. And the way it was done and the themes, and it just, watchability is incredible. Like, the legacy of that movie is substantial. And how it impacted film is substantial. So what a loaded year. But I think you have to reflect on the Shawshank Redemption. Mm-hmm. And I will say, 1996, the 1995 movies, Apollo 13 was up in there next to Braveheart. Ooh, that's a tough one too. Mm-hmm. That's a tough one too. I might give the nod. I love Braveheart, but I would give the nod to Apollo 13. Mm-hmm. But I think one last comment, which we'll get to probably next week, but you look at the list of the movies that were nominated for Best Picture in the 1990s, almost every single Phantom movie would have seen every single one of them. Mm-hmm. And you look at that compared to what we'll see in the 2010s, and especially what you see now, big difference. Mm-hmm. Big difference. And we'll talk about that later. All right, let's move on to our watch list. Movies we've watched over the past week. What'd you watch?
So I watched a few movies. I'm just going to highlight one, Interstellar.
Ah, yes.
So watch it again after watching Contact.
Yes.
The emotional weight that this movie has for what it is it's otherworldly. Yeah. To use a very trite turn of phrase based on what the movie's about. Mm-hmm. But the music in this movie, the acting in this movie, the writing in this movie, the settings that are used, how they use the cameras to film the space sequences, just everything about this movie is top class and definitely holds as much emotional impact on me as the first time I saw it.
Yeah. The ambition level for tackling a story like this is off the charts. It is, in my opinion, I would say the best traditional sci-fi movie I've ever seen. You could argue about whether something like Inception is sci-fi or something like that, but like traditional space science fiction movie. Apollo 13 doesn't count because it's based on an actual event. But like space science fiction movie is the best one ever done. It is the highest concept ever created. I've read the book about the science of Interstellar done by the physicists who worked on the movie with Nolan, and their dedication to accuracy when it came to the science aspect of it is second to none, including like their renditions of what a black hole looked like came out of the fact that they took all of the quantum data, all the calculations about black holes, and fed them into a giant supercomputer to render the first images of what those physics concepts would be like in an actual reality. And that's how they came up with the graphics for that. It's unbelievable.
All right, what did you watch?
I watched two movies that I'll talk about. I watched Super 8, which it's so good. I would argue that Super 8 started the 80s nostalgia. And I would argue there would be no Stranger Things if there had not been Super 8. Such a well done movie by J.J. Abrams. Kind of a what was that? What was the movie that actually in the 80s with the kids? Will Wheaton was in it. Shoot, now I'm forgetting it. It's it's like a coming of age, like 12, 13-year-old kid drama. But it's really, really good, really heartfelt story. Good classic action. It's like a tribute to kind of the Steven Spielberg Close Encounters of a Third Kind, like that classic old school science fiction movie. Really well done. And then I saw the Banshees of Inisherin. So I'm working on some of the Best Picture nominees. So I checked out the Banshees of Inisherin. Interesting movie. It's a slow developing character drama that takes place on an island off the coast of Ireland in the 1920s. And basically, Colin Farrell is friends with this older guy. And I'm blanking on the actor's name, but I'm not going to look it up. And they're good friends. And then one day, the older guy decides he doesn't like the other guy anymore. And Colin Farrell's character doesn't understand why he doesn't like him and why he doesn't talk to him. And so that just continues to escalate. Personal drama that continues to escalate to an absurd standpoint. it's okay. I mean, we're going to do a list of which ones you should watch and which ones you shouldn't coming up once we get around to watching all of them. But does it deserve Best Picture? No, I don't think it does. But it's okay. If you like this is up your alley because you like the slow, drawn out character drama. It's certainly that. And that does tend to be one that gets the attention of the Academy more regularly.
All right.
All right. Well, that is it. Thank you for watching Film for Fans. Check us out on our website, filmforfans.com. Our list of the 2022 best pictures from each of us is up on our website right now. So go to filmforfans.com, check that out, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Until next time, enjoy the movies.